People of the internet, welcome to Atheist Edge. Today I am joined by my esteemed guest, Richard Madsen, aka Demolish Doctrine. Richard, how are you doing today?
I'm better than I deserve. Peace and respect to you all and anyone who might watch this in the future.
Absolutely. So today we're going to discuss your unique interpretation of the Bible, and I did make a video. I released it to my members and Patreon members about a week ago now, but I tried to send you the link, but apparently you weren't able to open it. I did post it about 30 minutes ago on the channel, and if anybody had a chance to watch that, that'd be great. You get an idea exactly where I'm coming from pretty succinctly, but if not, then it doesn't matter because we're going to go over those arguments right now. So basically, Richard, I was watching the video with you talking to Dr. Josh Bowen about your argument for the Sabbath, and I broke down your argument syllogism premise by premise, and came up with different things that I wanted to discuss with you. So if you wanted to maybe start with there, or if you wanted to take a second to kind of give people kind of a background as to where you're coming from and your approach to the Bible in general, then we can kind of hone in on that.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah. Okay. So in 2012, I was an anti-theist at age 42. And then I had what I can only call a waking dream that was not drug induced, which I thought must be wrong because I thought it must come from me. When I went to disprove it, it was actually true, just outside of my knowledge range, which is why I thought it was false. That led me into a course of study where I read first the Bible, and I'm working on other things and have read a lot more since the Bible. But I see that this is a description of what could be plainly called ancient human aliens who handed this story down as kind of a heads up, just out of moral compunction. But they, of course, knew it would become superstition and ridiculous, which it did.
Interesting. Ancient human aliens. So no supernatural being whatsoever?
I don't think there is any possibility of something being supernatural. There's things science has not answered, but I think that nothing is supernatural.
Okay. That's interesting. So the God of the Bible and all the supernatural elements of the storylines, those are just allegories?
No, those are misunderstandings that the practitioners have because it's a holdover of tradition where people believed in magic.
Interesting. Okay. So if the wording of the Bible, the text and all the descriptions, they are in supernatural terms, how do we distinguish that from the reality that's underlying?
I don't see any supernatural terms anywhere in the text of the Bible. I mean, a person's welcome to read it that way. I disagree.
So when the Bible says that Moses' rod turned into a snake, what is that?
Yes. I think that's talking about people's perception of things, possibly something more like a mass delusion, depending on which one you're talking about, how many people say that they saw a certain thing. Of course, the time that it's referring to, people are under a lot of stress.
I'm sorry. Do you hear some background? It just started. No. Okay, great. Sorry.
I hear some background music, but I assume you're playing it.
No, I'm not playing that. My neighbors are watching some movie or something, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Sunday night, 9:00, and they're outside doing that kind of stuff, Anyways, interesting. So the stories in the Bible are just the current description, the people of the times, their current ability to describe what they were seeing. So then it becomes your job to suss out and figure out what they actually were witnessing in reality.
I think I have a taste of it, but ultimately it's only the hero's job. That is, the hero of the story has to have the perfect interpretation of it. And I think that the only use of it for everyone else really is that they have a fairy tale in their social memory that will be translated into reality later.
How do you mean as far as that? How will it be
by the
translated?
actual angel,
Reality.
what we would call in the American world, the English world, angels. That their very acts will make the story flip over in people's heads. If I did a short, for instance, Goldilocks and the Three Bears isn't talking about a little blonde German girl who got lost in the Black Forest and met talking bears. It's about respecting intelligent beings that are very different from you. Now, I'm sure that I didn't realize that till I was in my 30s. You know, and my growth and change of events and things that I had experienced made me realize the parable, the moral of the story, but not till much, much later. And I think that's what religion is doing.
Yeah, certainly there are morals to the stories that underlie the themes, and there are things to be gained from them. I think a lot of the stories' morals boil down to worship God and you'll be all right. And I think that that's the big question that is at hand here when we're talking about dealing with the Bible at all, is that a valuable moral to be interpreted or to be internalized at all?
Depends on your definition of God. If I take the biblical definition of God, it's a set of moral standards that are to be employed by angels during a certain time frame. That is what Christians would normally call end times, properly the great day of the Lord. And that it's a set of rulings for them on how to interact with human beings. And those are the laws. And the Old Testament I'll never get that word out. Laws in Deuteronomy are for running an army. And that's basically all of it right there, aside from conversation as to who goes to what heaven.
Okay, so your definition of God, can you give it to me?
Yes, sure. It's 7 spirits or immaterial constructs. That's what it means by spirit there, and I know that because it defines what it means specifically, and it lists 7 immaterial constructs. Those being wisdom, knowledge, counsel, understanding, fear, power, and conservation. And I can't prove that those are the most fundamental immaterial constructs for that kind of interaction during quote unquote end times. I can't prove that, but it seems to me I can't improve on them. I've spent some time considering that.
I got wisdom, fear, power. What were the other 4?
Knowledge, counsel, conservation. Let's see if I.
And you're saying that you got this definition from the text?
Yeah, it's in Isaiah. Wisdom, counsel, wisdom, knowledge, counsel, understanding, fear, power, and conservation. Power, that's the other one.
Understanding. And which scripture specifically in Isaiah are you referencing?
I am not good at recalling numerical sequences. They seem completely abstract to me. I can't memorize them. That includes like phone numbers, addresses, things like that. Sure. It's in Isaiah. Any simple Google search will turn it up.
Okay, I'll try that later then. So you're saying that the Bible gives us a definition of God, which is basically the culmination of these 7 attributes.
Well, immaterial constructs. They're not attributes of any person unless they choose to. Just like you could be a humanitarian if you so chose, if you thought that was important.
So all understanding is God that exists in the world, in the universe.
All understanding. No, it's the angels having understanding of us. It's not angels. All understanding. That's never claimed anywhere that I saw.
Okay, what are angels to you?
According to Revelation chapter 7, 9 through 15, these uncountable angels, it calls them angels, live with God and praise him day and night. That's past tense. Having, also past tense, been through the great tribulation, which is another way to say end times, and washed their clothes and made them large or white, depending on which translation, in the blood of the Lamb. Now, what does that mean? It means they accepted Christ during end times. That's how they got to be angels. I only know of one animal that could go through end times and accept Christ. It takes a certain level of consciousness to do something like that. Those are human beings. So it's directly claiming that they were human beings on an earth. End times only happening on an earth, of course. So that's where it claims angels come from.
So is this a previous iteration of human societies, or is this a whole other earth entirely?
Oh, an entire earth. Well, it could have happened on this earth, but I can't show that.
Okay, so it's just,
I mean, the rock itself is pretty old as far as I know.
Okay. And because these words are in past tense, you're saying that that means that... Well, I believe that Revelation is supposed to be a prophecy where the writer, I believe it was John, I can't remember, but I believe the idea was that he was being given a vision of the future, and he was telling us what happened in his story. So like if I tell you that last night I have a dream about tomorrow, right? Last night I had a dream about tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you that in the dream, what happened is Richard watched the video that we did and was very happy about what happened, right? I just used the past tense, but I'm talking about a future event, right? And I believe that's the framing that Revelation is in general. So, I mean,
that's completely valid. I mean, it's a decent observation on your part, no doubt.
So, I mean, are we talking maybe
your overall point
that's wrong?
What's
wrong? Saying that he's not talking about a future prophecy? He's talking about a past memory that was given to him?
It's future to this earth, I'm sure, because we're sitting here talking on the internet. It hasn't happened, obviously. But that doesn't make it future to all earths.
So it's not an inevitable thing?
Well, they're going to do it. We can't stop them. And in that way, it would be inevitable if they do it. If we can't stop them.
Who is they?
They being the angels, the ancient humans not from this planet.
They're going to do it, or they did do it?
They say they're going to. It obviously hasn't happened here yet.
The issue of me thinking about these things as future, you describing them as past, and then we're using a discussion about the tenses here is, I think, going to make a lot of confusion. And I'm really just trying to figure out exactly how to approach this. I think so. What I'm gathering is that you're saying that these things are a description of a past society, and angels are the ones who lived in the presence of these 7 attributes, or 7. What was the word you used?
Immaterial constructs, ideas, basically.
Yeah, sorry, constructs. So angels are those human beings who interact with these constructs, right?
When they are ministering to an earth for end times, yes. It has a time limit. That's why it does rest. But it also, past tense, has rested. Thereby, it has happened before, will happen again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to really get into where you're coming from here, and it's not entirely making sense to me. Because,
well, it's not very Christian, I must admit. It's also not very Jewish.
Right. Yeah. Why is that, do you think?
Because I'm honest, and I actually read it as an anti-theist, not making presuppositions from a religious standpoint. That's my best guess.
So what do you think that these things actually happened?
When or where? I mean, if we talk about like B theory of time, constantly, if we reckon time in an A theory, in the past and also will be in the future again.
You're saying, like, in the sense of the universe not having a real sense of time than it being some kind of a experience that we only have, right?
I believe that's true. Yeah, I think there's good supporting evidence for a B theory. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, but regardless of when, why do you think that they actually happened at all?
Thank you so much for not saying irregardless. I hate it when people do that. What was the question?
Why do you think that these events happened, or will happen in
Because
any sense?
They selfishly and in a very species-centric way want to replicate themselves and create utopian societies for their kind to live in, which is us. Unfortunately, it's part of the human condition that you can't have a utopian society without some small percentage of them having understood what suffering is. And because of that, there needs to be Earths that populate some small portion of their heaven, so that we can experience and appreciate and explain to our offspring, our children, what is sin. Because being born into a utopian society, you simply would not understand. For instance, you must be baptized for sin. I think Christians have completely upside down. So try to erase everything, or at least set to the side everything that you know about that phrase and what it means to be baptized and why you must be baptized for sin. And when I look at the text and what it actually says in a clean reading, there is no sinner in heaven. That seems like a standard. So in order to understand and experience sin, you must have been on an earth for obvious reasons. So to be baptized for sin means that you lived on an earth necessarily. For instance, Kaz, you have been baptized. Even if you've never been through any kind of a ceremony other than being in civilization, having maybe offspring, a spouse, family members, things like this. This is what baptism is. And that's just one basic misunderstanding that religious people hold.
I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
They're just reading it.
What is baptism?
To be here on an earth.
Baptism is just simply to be on an earth.
Yes. Your hardcore atheist who grew up atheist, etc., has been baptized. By the time I'd say they're 30, they've had plenty of it.
So when Jesus tells his disciples to go forth and make disciples, baptizing them, that's superfluous, right? That's not necessary to do. He's doing something redundant.
It's ministering to people on an earth, yes.
But why baptize them? They've already been baptized.
I think that's a verbiage problem. I'd have to review exactly where you're talking about.
I mean, any tense, future, past, whatever, you would not need to bring up the baptism. I mean, basically, a human baptism at that point would be a property of humanity. It'd be like saying, give them skin or give them eyeballs. You know, they have baptism by birthright. So why even mention it?
Because it's exclusive to the planet. It's not profoundly through human experience. Anyone who was born into heaven would not experience that. So I think it is marked and worth talking about, especially since it'll be a very, very small portion of the population. Interesting thought, though.
Okay.
I'll have to look at exactly where you're talking about.
So, I mean, when you first got the inkling that this was some kind of extraterrestrial situation, is there a specific part of the Bible, story in the Bible, that gave you that impression?
Oh, gosh. Actually, like a lot of it all the time. The more research I do, the more confirmation. Of course, confirmation bias is a problem, but the more possibility within the definitions of the actual words used. Certainly, there's no argument against it, and there's plenty of apparent confirmation for it. Other such things. Hebrews 1 and 10, with these invisible things God so made the worlds. That means I mean, it could mean as small as the chair you're sitting in is your world, you know? It could be just a landmass, but speaking in, epochs of time and man's time on the earth as a whole from the view of heaven, it seems that worlds there means literally an earth. The 24 elders all are presently enjoying the promises made specifically to the hero or the Christ, which means they must have been past Christ, or it would make no sense. And all of the religious explanations for the 24 elders are arbitrary and indecisive at best, because of that very problem, that it's evidently, and their brain just won't see it, because of personal prejudices, I think, that it's obviously a description of the promises made to the Christ, seated at the right hand, meaning correct place, of the Father, given a throne, given a crown, dressed in white. This is the 24 elders. But it also says there'll be one Christ for this earth. Well, if there's more than one Christ, but one Christ for this earth, and there's 24 of them, there has to be 23 previous earths. And it just goes on and on and on like this.
Okay, I'm going to have to review that part and kind of dig into that a little bit deeper. Can I just tell you how I see this, how I read these texts from my perspective?
Why don't I tell you what you think?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
You're a scholar. You're an intelligent guy. You obviously take the mainstream view that this is an explanation to a people of why and how they live and how they got to where they are when it was written down.
Sort of, yeah, but more specifically, the idea that there are beings that have these supernatural powers, beings like Noah and Adam and Eve, Hercules, all these beings, Zeus, the pantheon that Yahweh is inherited from. I think that all these things are just human beings in our more, you might say, Cro-Magnon state, where they made some kind of accomplishment, some kind of feat. Maybe they killed an oncoming tribe or whatever of other human beings, and they found a jawbone and used it as a weapon for the first time. I don't know if you've ever seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, the moment where the monkey starts picking up the bone. So I think that those guys are the first gods. I think that those are the Horuses and the Osirises, the first human beings that picked up a weapon and used it against other human beings. They were the ones that took for themselves glory, women, and power and prestige, and they kind of helped push us out of the caves in general. But at the same time, they put themselves into our collective memory as these supernatural beings, even though at the time we just had this primitive understanding of what natural actually is. So for you see a person with a jawbone, imagine yourself being a primitive ape-like human being, and you see another one with a jawbone slaying a bunch of other creatures. You're going to think, what the hell's going on? What am I seeing here? How did he do this?
Well, I think I don't have to imagine myself a primitive ape-like creature. I am a primitive ape-like creature. I'm not so different from what I'd guessed you'd say. The social idea of the hero certainly has been used and usurped by leadership and practitioners throughout the ages for control of the people, the opiate of the masses, if you will. And I think that's true in reality, but I think there's a big difference between the practitioner and the practice, and we just changed the conversation to the practitioner, which is okay. I just want to point out that we did.
Okay.
See, because you're intrinsically assuming that man wrote these stories. I'm intrinsically assuming man did not. So that's two different conversations.
So, I mean, the stories, at least some of them, do explicitly say that they were written by people.
Okay. Well, L. Ron Hubbard wrote something. Never denied it. But I don't find that important. Who are you talking about?
The first person accounts in the Bible The ones that say, I saw
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Those would
What's wrong with
certainly
that?
be people. But who else would have written it?
Not necessarily. Well,
Who,
just like there's no second
in your view, who
story
wrote
or
it?
angels. There can be
But angels are humans
no
by your definition, right?
already ascended humans, yes. Which makes them a lot better human. Every bit of the potential of what a human, you could say something like fully evolved to their environment, which is a much better environment, something like that. That's loose language. Don't take it too seriously, but something like that. Already ascended beings, and the text says so in no uncertain terms, because Michelangelo's painting of the Last Supper is inaccurate to the text. It is completely and totally inaccurate to the text. It's cute, but it's wrong. Here's how it's wrong. The apostles are sent to the upper room through following the man carrying a pitcher of water through the gate into the city. All those are astronomical terms. To prepare a supper for the disciples. Now, the disciples in the story count 144,000 folks, give or take. But there is no second story or third story construction in the ancient Near East that even possibly could have held 144,000 people in one sitting. That just can't happen. However, if it's talking about heaven, the upper room, the looming mountain, I have absolutely no problem with it. And that works well in the description of Christ and his prophecies, and him saying the time is at hand, that end times is now, because he evidently is talking during end times, which is also why, not to switch the subject, but also why the two witnesses of end times in the book of Revelation fit the description of the life of Christ, because that's one and the same person, just different accounts of the same thing. After all, we have to remember that these books were independent of each other and were in themselves complete stories. And they were only compiled into a bibliography, comparatively, fairly recently. These stories going all the way back to Hinduism, ancient Near East, etc., Gilgamesh, you name it.
So we're talking about ascended people who are telling us a story about their world and how the end times played out in their world, and that's the entirety of the Bible.
Yeah, except for the first 5 days of creation, yes. But okay, that's just a short story, just a little briefing.
So when we read, people, critical scholars, they are able to read the Bible and date aspects of it, in comparison to events from other parts of history. They can date, for example, there's the conquest of the Israelites. I think the Babylonians. I think that there's dates that we have from archaeological evidence that can kind of give us an idea of when that happened.
Yeah, sure.
So clearly, then we have the story of Jesus talking about Rome, and that's pretty recent history, where we know about the different Caesars that existed, and we can have information about the ranks and whatever. This is not a totally different world, and we have a clear historical connection to it. It's not as if that world was wiped away entirely, a new world was recreated, and then, or are you saying that? Are you saying that this is some kind of like multiverse hypothesis where this is another universe almost that is totally?
I think that's unnecessary complexity.
The same historical.
I'm not saying it isn't. But it's unnecessary complexity. There's plenty of huge objects we can't see from here. There's entire galaxies that we know are behind another galaxy, because we can see the light and gravitational lensing in that ring that appears around the other galaxy. So we know there's something bright back there. We just can't see it because something's in the way.
Yeah. Gigi wants to know what happens if his interpretation is that you are wrong.
The same thing as that if you think I'm right. Nothing. In fact, divine hiddenness coupled with the vague writing of all these stories allows you at least a perception of free will and definitely the actuality of choices. And that's part of our growth and part of our brotherhood and sisterhood building and part of our suffering. And congratulations to that.
So when you say divine hiddenness, what are you referring to? Because that seems to imply some
God
kind
ain't
of
in the
supernatural
sky.
stuff. So
heaven is not here literally. You don't see it. I don't see it.
where is heaven? Is that just a time and place for a previous
other side of Jupiter? A billion light years from here? I don't know. It could be anywhere.
Okay. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to go through that syllogism you went through with Dr. Bowen, okay? Can we do that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to read the whole thing out real quick for you, everybody, just so they know the whole thing. Premise
I may have
one.
revised it since, by the way. It's been a couple years.
Oh, really? Okay, well, you let me know. That'd be great.
Well, I do.
So
I don't think of these things only once.
That's awesome. So syllogism 1, premise 1. God works with man. Premise 2, working negates resting. Conclusion, God is not resting. Still valid? Still your...
Still good.
Okay.
I mean, to
Syllogism,
this earth, yes.
Okay, good. Syllogism 2, God is not resting. That's premise 1. Premise 2, God rests on the Sabbath. Conclusion, God is not in his Sabbath. Okay, syllogism 3, God is not in his Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for God. That's premise 2, sorry. And then conclusion, there has been no Sabbath.
To this earth.
Okay.
Yes.
To this earth. So
yeah. All of this is in reference to this earth, yes.
So yeah, that's an interesting dynamic to try to incorporate into my mind here, is that you are saying that this whole story that was in Exodus is actually a different earth entirely, not our earth.
Yes.
Does that mean not our God?
It necessarily has to be. What's that?
Does that mean not our God?
There is no our God. There is no God in that sense. There's only rules for angels engaging in end times, which is why it's a temporary thing and it rests. It necessitates, it demands an earth, it demands people on the earth, it demands end times, and then until another earth, it rests. It doesn't have a purpose.
I'm just having trouble dealing with this concept like this, trying to take God out of the Bible as a being,
It's
as a singular
there.
being.
Oh, no being. Well, being in the sense of the literal sense, in the philosophical sense of being, that is, immaterial constructs exist. But does it have consciousness? No, absolutely not.
There's a character to this Bible. There's a character of God who is interacted with and is spoken to and speaks.
Would you show me one place?
Takes action.
Would you show me one place, if
God
you would,
talks?
where it's not an angel or a representative or the Father? It's not any representative of God, but it is actually El Elyon, the Eloach, the God.
The whole Adam and Eve story is supposedly God speaking to Adam directly, if I'm not mistaken.
Really? Because does that read God, or does that read Elohim? What does that read?
I mean, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure.
Because it should say Eloach if it means a singular living
Eloach.
being. It should say with power. It should be Eloach, but it's not. See, the Hebrew word for a singular powerful being, a living being, is Eloach, not Elohim. Certainly isn't Yahweh. Or Jehovah.
I know that Yahweh didn't come in until later. I know that it started out as El and then Elohim, but I believe that this is more evidence of the pantheon's evolution in their minds more than the God.
I never really did address that. I'd like to comment more on what you said last time you said that part. I believe that all of this is, I'm going to use a term, it's proprietary, I'll explain it. that all of religions are ancient, cryptic, prophetic animism. That is, they're using the surroundings to tell a memorable story to a people who already have an established society and set of moral standards and value systems. Because if I eat the cow, that's fine as an American, not fine if you're a Hindi to eat the cow. And cow means two totally different things in those two cultures, but many things do. So each story is designed for that culture, which is why they must be different.
So, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. I don't really want to go down the moral relativism thing right now.
No, but you did mention what about the historical events in the stories. And to that, I say, yes, they used pretend and real historical events. We know some of them did not happen. For instance, I could tell you that last night I went and abducted, or tonight, I'm going to go abduct your neighbors for playing a movie in the side yard, too close to where you're trying to record. And you might believe me for a time, but tomorrow when it's light outside and they're still there, my story is debunked. I simply did not do it. The same thing would apply to the wars with the mosquito bites, all the ites. The Hebrew people knew they did not slaughter off entire peoples. They know they didn't do it, which is why your traditional Jew is going to look at that philosophically, not historically. Well, the Christian, 1,000 miles away and on a different continent and 1,000 years later, thinks it's history. It's not meant to be. It's telling a parable. And that is what it's doing. Now, will those things happen in end times? I do believe they will. After all, if the 7 announcing miracles happened, where would we be? Well, we'd be set back about 10,000 years with no government, living in small groups, huddling together, trying to survive near a fresh water source, which is like every story everywhere.
Okay. So I've got here, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. This is from Strong's Concordance. And we're looking at, maybe I have to go back to see where it came from. Yeah, let me show you where it came from. The Bible verse in Genesis. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. That's going to be
Elohim.
Right. Okay, so where are you expecting to see an El? What was the other one?
Well, the word Elohim is an extension, the plural of El Oach. An El, power, Ach, being, singular. Elohim, the im, is the plural form. The I am, im,
okay.
That's the plural form, meaning a group of powerful beings.
So we're looking for the Eloach?
Fairly decent. Just find Eloach anywhere. It's not there. There is no singular most powerful being. Not having personage. I mean, it exists, but it doesn't have personage. And they're not using the philosophical word being. They're using the colloquial term being.
Interesting.
Like a rock has being, but no consciousness as far as we know. But you are a being who also has personage. You're a person. So you won't find personage Eloach. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it gets translated to the monotheistic God, but that's inaccurate. It's just wrong. In fact, Rabbi Tovia Singer actually has a card up his sleeve. He plays a distraction method, a bait and switch, if you will, talking about the Elohim as being the attributes of God, but it doesn't mean attributes. It means persons. So in order to be monotheistic Elohim, the traditional Jew has decided those are aspects of God. That's strict cheating. I mean, that's just wrong.
So why don't you conclude that what happened was that they were talking about a pantheon and not just a single God? And then, but you're not even going that far. You're saying that they are actually just talking about a set of constructs, not necessarily a pantheon.
No, let's not mix those two things up. There's angels, and then there's the Yod He Vav He. The Yahweh or Jehovah, the Yod He Vav He, is literally the hand. That's the Yod. The He, four corners of the earth or four corners of heaven. Tent peg, Vav, He. It's the hand of grace and power with which heaven is tied to the earth. That it's a set that mandate the earth itself, people living on it, and how angels interact with us during end times. And then, of course, it rests because it has no purpose between earths. Because in heaven, there's no God in heaven, so to speak, as far as I can tell. Boy, Christians will love that line. There's no God in heaven, as far as I can tell. Oh, well.
But angels are in heaven.
Yeah, living physical beings, as we are, only smarter, prettier, healthier, stuff like that.
They're in an atemporal utopia.
Could be. I'm not sure. It doesn't really say, except for 1,000 of our years are as a day to them, to the Elohim, the angels, the plural powerful beings. And we do know that time is affected by gravity wells. And if they're in spaceships traveling not in a gravity well, it might be 1,000 years to a day. That may be true, which is a really interesting thought, considering that like no one would write a line like that because you'd sound so crazy until science caught up.
I mean, I can see how you can get that from the text. I've had similar thoughts in the past, but it seems to be multiplying entities without cause. I'm sorry, show what?
Well, okay, it's logically fallacious to multiply entities when it's not necessary.
Sure.
It's not fallacious when it is necessary, however.
Why would it be necessary here?
Well, because the text literally says 1,000 years is as a day, and completely out of a gravity well, which we haven't been, might be true. But we can definitely see a graduating metered time difference between being where we are in a gravity well and being somewhere else. So we've already measured that. It's not guesswork. That's just true.
But you're suggesting that it's necessary to multiply entities to understand a text as true.
No, I said that statement in the text is true in reality. I don't think I'm multiplying entities whatsoever.
I'm sorry.
It's literally what it says, and it's true in reality. I'm sorry, I spoke over.
Can you remind me of that statement? Could you remind me of that statement?
1,000 years is as a day. It comes out very close to that in the King James.
Sure. So regardless, outside of the context of the Bible, where is that true?
In our gravity well, time moves slower. We sent a clock to space and brought it back.
So yeah, I can grant you that there's probably some point in the orbit of some black hole where our 1,000 years is as a day. In a literal
Possibly,
sense.
Don't know.
But other than that one specific distance from the center of the black hole, it's not really a truth. It's just like
I don't know why you're saying that.
I don't know why we're saying that it's true.
Okay.
Like,
if you imagine the space fabric model, right, and the Earth is a dent in that space-time fabric. That conical shape as it's sloping down, going toward the Earth, the further you are out of that, up on that slope, the faster time moves, literally. And the idea is, if you got completely out of that slope and onto the flat fabric of space-time, you would experience time in a very different way than we presently do.
Sure. But just as it's true that it's at that point in the orbit would be analogous to 1,000 years to a day, that ratio, there's all the other points within the distance that make all the other different time lengths that are possibly ratioed to a day for us real too. And we're only singling that one out.
Maybe I don't see your point.
I just...
Are you saying there'd be a constant gradation between all distances from any given gravity well? Because we simply don't know that. You are guessing.
Well, we're just guessing that it would be 1,000 years to a day.
No,
it could be
the further we
it could
get
never
out,
reach that one. We've never tested and
maybe you're right.
1,000 years to a day ratio of but I'm presuming that that's a possibly an accurate ratio that exists at some point in a distance to a black hole. I think that's fine. But if that's true, then any other distance would change the ratio.
You know, that's fair, but maybe they're talking about some certain distance. I can't say. It's not that precise of a statement.
It's so imprecise of a statement that I'm wondering, why would we go to the lengths of figuring out where specifically around a black hole this could ever possibly be true, just to say that there's some truth to this statement?
I mean, I could agree with you as much as possible by saying something like 1,000 years is an awfully round number. So, I mean, if you want to look at it as vague, or maybe it has to be some certain distance from some certain gravity well, I'm okay with that. But from what we can tell, it certainly would exist somewhere.
That may be the case. I mean, I could say that unicorns are real, and maybe somewhere on some other distant planet there are horse-like animals that have horns growing out of their head. But I don't know that. I'm just saying that. I'm just pulling that out of my ass. So it's not knowledge. So that's apparent by the context of the conversation. So for you, in order to even consider that as true, you would have to multiply entities by creating all these other universes, where not universes, but planets where that kind of evolution is real, right? And maybe that's possibly true, but it's not necessary. You can just disregard it as not true because you have no reason to.
You certainly could. I mean, you're welcome to. That's part of the freedom that we have right now. And I think that's by design. And as far as me saying knowledge, I take a philosophical view and usage of the word knowledge. I don't have any.
Sure, I see what you mean.
Now, am I personally persuaded that things I'm saying are absolutely true? Yes, I'm personally persuaded they're absolutely true.
But we can use the word knowledge colloquially to describe things that we have confidence of to the degree of firsthand experience.
Confide, with faith. Great. It's a faith position. That's right.
I wouldn't call it a faith position when we talk about our firsthand experiences. Do you have faith that you're talking to me right now?
Yes. I can't prove it.
But you're experiencing.
I certainly can't prove that you exist. What's that?
But you are knowing it right now.
I don't know it. I'm persuaded. I'm fully persuaded. But I can't show it. I don't know that. That's not a truth.
So you could be persuaded that we are not having a conversation right now.
I could be in a padded room right now. I can't tell.
Well, okay. Let's just go back to the syllogism for a little bit, okay?
Sure.
So, God works with man. What does that mean?
There is prayer. influences from heaven, living beings, the Elohim. And that's not even to mention physical intervention in end times. Go ahead.
God intervenes in the universe.
Not everywhere, I would think, but wherever an earth is concerned, yes.
Okay, I'm just interesting. I just want to know, like, does the... Wait a minute. No. Because God is a set of constructs. So how do they intervene?
Sure. Same way the Constitution does in the United States. It's a set of immaterial constructs and ideas that rule a society in some certain ways. Societies agree to whatever constitution they might have. It's part of living in that country.
You think understanding is a similar type of construct to the Constitution?
Yeah, it's an immaterial construct like life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We don't know what life is. Happiness, my gosh, that's arbitrary. Liberty, what the hell does that mean? Liberty to do what and when and with whom? They're just immaterial constructs, a set of ideals.
They are. But I would say that there's a distinction there that's important to understand. The difference between something like a government and something like truth is that the government has... I'm sorry, go ahead.
You switched from the Yahweh to the Elohim there when you said constitution. I said constitution, you said governance, governors. That's two different things. The President of the United States is not the Constitution, for instance.
Sure.
Neither are you.
Sure.
Okay.
But the government is a construct.
Sure, that's a different construct, sure.
Right, and it's based on a constitution in our government anyways.
Right, like the angels follow Yahweh. Sure. I would say the angels do a better job of following Yahweh than our governors do following the Constitution, but that's another conversation.
But where is something like truth is a...
I'm sorry.
Something like truth, that kind of construct is a construct that is created by people everywhere at all times, regardless of language and culture.
We're back to the arbitrary.
Generated. Well,
that's subjective.
What do you mean by arbitrary?
How is that subjective? It's personal.
What is?
A person's mapping of reality by experience is subjective because their experience is subjective, and their idea of truth, though true for them, I'm sure, or they believe something else, is not the truth. It's what they believe. It's a faith position.
Okay, but just like the basic laws of logic, right? Identity. A is not B, right?
As far as I know.
So regardless of what I believe is true, if I make the intentional decision to obscure that truth for an alternative, then I am
a governor.
Being dishonest.
Or a preacher, maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's not subjective, right? The fact that I'm being dishonest is not subjective.
Is the
regardless of the
person being dishonest?
The truth of the matter. I'm sorry. The truth of the matter is not the question. The question is just, if I know what I believe is true and then I say otherwise, that's an objective fact of me being dishonest, right?
Yeah, that is saying something that isn't on a personal level, sure.
Right. So in that way, human beings generate honesty as a construct.
I don't think so. No, I think you just gave a qualifier or a disqualifier as proof of a qualifier, and I don't think that's rational.
What do you mean?
You just gave a way to you just found a way to disprove someone as being true, but you didn't find a way to confirm that they are saying a truth. I don't think you can do that.
No, you can't. But you can prove that the dishonesty is a real thing. And if
But
dishonesty is a
you
real
do
thing, then
agree with me
honesty
that's
must
a
be a thing, right?
disqualifier. You do agree with me that's a disqualifier of a truth, not a confirmation. You do agree with me there.
Yeah, I would say so.
Anyone can lie about anything at any time. That doesn't mean that they know a truth.
Sure.
It only means
But
they
it
know
means
how
that
to
they're
lie.
capable of truth. But it means that
No,
they're
it doesn't.
capable of truth.
No, it means they're capable of
You-
lying, which is what you just described.
You're saying that the capacity of dishonesty does not entail the capacity of honesty?
Of course not. I can just make some crap up anytime.
I think that
Anyone
the
can.
dichotomous nature of honesty, either being of a thing being either true or false, makes that not correct.
Honesty and true and false are not the same thing. A person can truly believe that they are saying something that is actual in reality, and they could be completely wrong.
But that's not a lie.
No, they're not lying, but it doesn't make them able to tell a truth either, just because they can lie.
No, it is a truth. By definition, if they are not being dishonest, then they are being honest.
I love where the conversation went, but you can show someone's being purposefully dishonest, fine, but you can't show that they can tell a truth.
You can either be honest or dishonest. Is that a dichotomy?
Sure, but
So
you're
if
talking
you are not
about
being
you're talking about intent. Intent and accuracy are not the same thing.
Well, sure. That's why truth is not really a useful construct when it comes to understanding history.
Unless we knew what the truth was. Obviously, all of this is subjective.
Right. So we're reading these texts and we're seeing all these things that people are saying, and they're true to their eyes. They're not lying. These are our truths. But
no, that doesn't
facts?
make no. That makes it a fact to them. It doesn't make it true. See, because you're talking about their faith position, not the actuality. I don't want to mix up terms here. What you believe is not the universe.
Correct.
It's
That's
your
the
experience.
point I'm making.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's the point I'm making. That these things, these stories in the Bible, they're the truths of the people that experience them, but they are not necessarily fact at all.
Wow, you use fact and truth the opposite way. I'm using the philosophical ideas behind what is a truth and what is a fact. A fact is the best that we can do right now. That's why science defines it that way. A truth, however, is universal and objective in no one's opinion. It just is.
Right. So
you could happen by happenstance. You could. What's that?
I can't use a definition of fact that is subjective or time dependent or person dependent.
Well, then I don't know what definition you're using.
It's the data points of reality, that which is.
Just tell me, are facts a subcategory of truths, or are truths a subcategory of facts?
I would say that.
Or is that just the same thing?
No, they're totally different things.
Okay, which is which? Which is
they're
greater?
Correlated. I would say truths are correlated to facts. Facts are greater.
What facts are greater? Okay, so you've taken the word fact and put it in the place of truth philosophically. I'm not picking on you, but that's the way you're using it. You can disagree. You'll just be wrong.
Well, we'll go. We can hash that out later, I suppose.
I mean, just Google the scientific definition of the word fact and the philosophical term truth. And a fact is a subcategory. It's what we believe right now. Facts are faith positions. Can't be proven.
A thing that is known or proven to be true. Yeah.
Whose
okay.
definition of fact is that? Or truth?
It's just a Google search. I'm okay with not being in line with the generally accepted term, because these terms, as they use them today, cause confusion. Is not correct way to use it. The way that the philosophical term, if that's the way it is, that truths are that facts are a subset of truth, that's just ridiculous in my opinion.
Okay.
And we can hash that out further if you'd like. Actually, I'd love to talk
No,
about that more.
I'm willing
but
to go
it's
with your
obvious to me.
definitions, and I'll use them the way you're using them, so we're clear.
Okay, I'm trying to do that with you too as well. I hope so that that's coming through.
Oh, let's not both do it, because that'll be worse.
Well, I mean,
because then we're just switching positions.
So yeah, we can keep going on that if you'd like, or we can go back to the syllogism.
Oh, the syllogism or whatever you like is fine. I'm here saying what I think is true, and I think I'm persuaded for good rational reasons, and I don't expect anyone to believe me, except that when I say I believe, I'm not lying.
Right. I don't think that you're lying. Okay, so let's jump to the conclusion of syllogism 1. God is not resting. And in the Bible, Genesis 2, I believe that the term is rested, that it is in the past tense. Do you agree with that?
On the Sabbath, God rested. Yes.
Okay. So,
actually, Elohim rested, but yeah.
Now, the one thing that I didn't think about when I was going through your arguments is the idea that God is not, because you're just not telling me at the beginning of this, right? Was that God is not a being. It's not a person.
Not a person, right.
What is resting? Understanding and knowledge rested on the seventh day?
Yes, as well as all the others of the seven spirits. That it doesn't have a direct purpose in that application. It is put on a shelf, put on a back burner, stuck in a filing cabinet.
And then that seventh day being a past future event, right?
Future to this earth, past to some past earth, yeah.
So there will be a time coming in our earth where understanding and knowledge and power are not
all of them
required at all.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That when we're ascended into heaven, we don't have a God. That God is for conducting end times. It's all the necessities of the earth. However, when we know ultimately, for instance, what truth means, and it's objective, not subjective truths, then you don't need a guide. You don't need this rule book for engaging with people who don't understand these things, because you wouldn't be until another earth.
Okay.
I'd call them reminders. I'd call them standards or reminders. Not that the angels don't really know this.
Okay, so God is not resting means that those
being used
constructs are being used right now.
No, not right now. During end times.
Now is not end times?
I don't see any signs.
Really?
One of the best no signs is your existence.
So all those verses in Revelations that Christians usually refer to as signs for the end times and relate them to now, how do you respond to stuff like that usually?
Confirmation bias. It's obvious, evident confirmation bias. Here's why I say that. And it's an evil nation that needeth a sign. There are 7 signs of the coming of God. The 7 signs for the coming of God are for an evil nation. But you're an atheist. Now, how is that possible? Well, obviously there's been no signs for you, have there?
So the way that I read those verses is that what they're doing is extrapolating from their time to all time. And when it comes to things like the changes and transitions from one society to another, those things happen on a regular basis and they're kind of inevitable. So it's not difficult to say, hey, this crap that's happening now at the transition time of our society is going to happen again at the transition of another. I don't think that's any kind of prophetic type of thing. It's just
it's
logic.
not exactly revelatory, is it? It's not surprising. No. Yeah. The issue with that is okay, so there's astrology and astronomy all over this. And I'm sure many people have noticed that. I'm not particularly interesting there. And I touched on this, but I think now's a good time. To go through the gates are the limit of a constellation, or 30 degrees. The city is the constellation itself. The man carrying a pitcher of water is a description of the last sign, Aquarius. And of course, if you're a fan of music, especially old funky music, in the 70s was literally the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And we are, by some calculations, in Aquarius now. That is, it's claiming in the story, when Jesus speaks to the apostles, that they are speaking in the time of Aquarius. Now, each eon, or 30 degrees of reverse progression, is 2,160 precise years. That's not rounded off. And we are now in Aquarius, the last sign in the zodiac. And that's what it's referring to. So when people ask me, well, what makes you think that Jesus is talking to the apostles during end times instead of 2,000 years ago? Because the Bible says so in no uncertain terms. He says, look, the time is at hand. This generation shall not pass. Age of Aquarius. I mean, he says all this stuff. And it's not encoded. And if not for the confirmation bias of the religious adhering to some tradition that they don't understand, because astrology is not predominant science anymore, and they don't bother to study it because their preachers tell them not to. That's witchcraft, you know. They're just uninformed about these things, about what the text is actually saying, and it's no wonder.
Okay, so just so I get this straight, the age of Aquarius is actually the time that is at hand.
Yeah. Which is why he's not a false prophet.
And how many years is the interval between ages of Aquarius?
In reverse progression through the zodiac, 2,160 years. Now, that number may sound familiar to you. If you did that in days, it'd be 3.5 years, or half of end times, and is in the text a few times.
Okay. And what was the part of the text again that there was a specific part of the text that you said referred to the age of Aquarius? You said it was a man with buckets of water, I think. Is that correct?
How will we find the apostles ask, how will we find the upper room? He says, you will go through the gate, that's the limits of a constellation, into the city, that's the constellation itself. You'll follow a man carrying a pitcher of water, that's the description of Aquarius. Actually, its proper name. He will take you to the upper room, i.e. heaven. And of course, after that, the Holy Spirit descends, the Great Commission, going to the next earth, giving them religion as well, etc., etc.
So you're taking the fact that the man is carrying water as a symbol of the age of Aquarius.
No, that's the symbol of the age of Aquarius. The man carrying a pitcher of water. It's literally word for word the correct terms. Like Aquarius is a nickname, just like Virgo is a nickname for the virgin with the sheaves of wheat, the Bethlehem. It's literally the name of the constellation. The house of bread.
But where's the temporal connection there? What makes this a time in the verse?
Oh.
As opposed to literally a person with water.
What's that?
As opposed to literally somebody who's carrying water. Yeah.
Because it mentions every sign of the zodiac individually and describes them. In the blessings of Israel, in what Bethlehem means, in the 4 ages of about 2,000 years. Religious people used to think it was 2,000 years, 2160. The age of Moses, well, pre-Moses, Moses, Pisces, and Aquarius. They're listed in order of about 2,000 years, give or take, but we know the exact number. This is why they think Christ died 2,000 years ago, is because he was the beginning of the age of Pisces. This is why they think Moses was 4,000 years ago, because he was the beginning of Aries. Which is why Christ says, I will be with you even to the end of the age. That's eon, literally a sign of the zodiac.
So he didn't die?
Not yet.
So he's going to be
scheduled
crucified?
though. There's a countdown timer for this, yeah. But he has to do it when it matters and when it'll work. You're the Son of God as well, you know. Does Jesus have magical powers? Not that I see described anywhere.
But he will be raised from the dead?
Yeah, I think that's talking about advanced technology and understanding of the human and biology. I think that's what it's referring to. Literally taking a dude that's been dead 3.5 days and bringing him back. Pretty impressive, if you ask me.
Okay, so Syllogism 3, premise 2. The Sabbath is made for man. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, man is not made for the Sabbath. Sabbath is made for man. It's a direct quote from Christ talking about him eating on the Sabbath, the seventh day. That it's for us. We're not for it. It's not like a law where we should, I don't know, in order to show our righteousness, bow down before it or something. The Sabbath is about our ascension. It's for us. We're not slaves to the Sabbath. The Sabbath is slaves to us. A slave to us.
Right, but your premise says that the Sabbath is made for God.
God's rest of the Sabbath is made for God's rest, yeah.
So, what scripture are you referring to? Are you referring to Mark 2?
Again, not good at numbers. Forgive me. It's just something my brain doesn't do. I refer to the whole of the text, ignoring no parts of it. So I'm referring to all of it, all the time. It just depends on the topic.
Mark 2, verse 27. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So
that's correct.
That does seem to exclude the idea that the Sabbath was made for God.
No, God rests the Sabbath, not that the Sabbath is for God. The Sabbath is for the rest of God. That is, when we ascend and are made perfected and completed in our process of creation, then the Yod He Vav He has no purpose to us immediately after that. So yes, the Sabbath is for us, not us for the Sabbath. And yes, God rests once the Sabbath is in place, active, because then we don't need supernatural, superstitious ideas like we have now by the metric ton.
So the Sabbath isn't made for man. The Sabbath is made for God, which man will be when they ascend.
Well, we become part of the Elohim in that sense. We become God. I tell you now, all of you are God, but if you don't accept these truths, you will die like men. So yes, it's true in that sense, but I think we're flipping back and forth between two topics here. God resting, okay, let's say that the United States was dissolved. Okay? That doesn't mean all the people died. So no matter how long a person lived in the United States and was part of the United States, they were never the Constitution. And that seems like what you're asking me is, when does a person become the Constitution? They don't.
I mean, I certainly don't feel like I'm asking you that. Yeah.
But if there was no United States, the Constitution of the United States would rest, because there ain't one no more. And if the people moved on to some greater societies, say we just called it the the country of gibberish, and we were all gibberishish or gibberian, then the Constitution would rest. We'd have something else we'd be going by. And never the twain shall meet. People are not the Constitution. Constitution's not a person.
I'm just trying to see where you get the idea that the Sabbath was made for God. I'm just
not for God, for the rest of God, for God's rest, not for God. Did I write it that the Sabbath is for God? I wrote it exactly that way.
I believe so. I mean,
okay, well, strike that. put a line through that, little pencil mark in red through that, and insert the word for.
It says God, the Sabbath is made for God.
Rest. I left out the word rest. I'm sorry. I would have thought
For
somebody
God's
would have
rest.
assumed that anyway, because it says that. Doesn't it say that in a line preceding or following that?
Yeah, it's just that I think that the sentence as it read makes the point that it's not talking about the activity that the Sabbath is for. It's about who the person is for, that the Sabbath is for.
I should have to take a note that is not written well enough. Thank you. I thought it was clear in the syllogism, but it should be in that line. You're right.
So I kind of want to go back to the Occam's razor thing. I think we had left it at where you were saying that it is necessary to multiply entities to understand this text.
No, that's not what I'd said.
No?
What I said is multiplying entities is fallacious when it's not necessary. However, when it's necessary, it's not fallacious. For instance, if what you have is necessary but not sufficient, and you need more, then you just need more. And that's not necessarily fallacious.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. And so, like, at first blush, we have this text that seems to be giving us the story of a being and their relationship to all of mankind. And now we're going to increase the entity. Well, that's just what the mainstream ideas, right? That they all seem to say that. Even
I don't care about that.
The most esoteric. It's just that's what it seems to be at first blush, right? So now we're going to have to say that we are going to try to dive deeper into it for a better understanding of what the actual truth is here, right?
Okay. First of all, at first blush, I disagree with you completely. Now, there could be 20 billion people who say that's how I read it, that's how it should be read. That's an opinion. I did not read it that way first time I read it. I didn't see anything that they're talking about at all when I read it. I still don't see what the hell they're talking about. And what they say makes no sense in reality anyway. And it doesn't work in the definitions given, which is why the translation had to get so weird and why it's worded so oddly.
So
I don't agree that at first blush.
So you're telling me that at first blush, at your first reading of the text, you don't see the God of this Bible as a being that is a person with
definitely
human-like attributes. At first blush,
I don't see that description there at all. I've only read it once.
So when it talks about God walking and talking and doing this and that, that is
it doesn't read the word God there. It says Elohim. You just looked this up. It's not the word God. It's angels.
Well, it doesn't say angels. It's a plural divine. Which, I mean, is in line with the mainstream idea.
You don't like the label angels for a plural of divine?
The mainstream idea of God is that he's a trinity, right? Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So that takes care of the whole Elohim thing right there.
That's not there. That's not in the text.
No, it's not. But they can extrapolate that from what you're saying.
No.
All you need is what you're saying to extrapolate
that from what I'm saying.
It's a plural divine. We.
If a person wants to say plural divine, you have to include all the angels, the Father, the young sprout, Jesus. I mean, he's working on it. Give the guy some slack, give him some time. But if you're going to say plural divine, you mean all of them.
I don't
it's
know
not
what
limited
right?
to a Trinity.
The word Elohim is not a useful word. Like
to describe
the definition here is still on my screen, right? It's got rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods, godlike ones, the true God. It's got all these different definitions. Using that word has no utility. You tell me what that you use that word in my presence. Now we have to have a whole other conversation about why you even said that word, and that's not helpful in relaying conversation.
What do you mean it's not helpful? I'm just saying it's angels. I said this from the beginning. I've never switched my position. It means angels.
And you're just so every time, but no, only when Elohim, right?
Right, that word. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you know what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to rewatch this episode and try to take notes as to where your ideas go and kind of make a map of it, because that's the only way I wrap my head around all this.
Good luck, man. I appreciate even the thought of even trying to do that.
Because why would we always interpret the word Elohim as angels every time we encounter it in the first couple chapters of the Bible? Why would we not use
because
it as
it's plural, powerful beings doing good things? I don't know what else you want to call those guys. You call them demigods, that's fine.
I don't know. I just don't know how to wrap my head around it. Because then it changes from Elohim to other terms for God in the Bible.
Yes. Only when the sentence you just uttered was in reference to modern translations, where they just translated everything to God. For instance, the Jehovah's Witness translated everything to Jehovah. Not correct. And they did that for I know the King James very well. The first sentence of the Bible is not in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. That is sloppy. What it does read is in the beginning of what you care about. Powerful beings repurposed the ground and the sky. That's what it reads. Now, persons they can King James only their ass off if they want, but they're just being silly. It's a translation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole episode that Jim did on this channel.
Shout out to the Master Sergeant, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to Jim. Where he talks about how the evolution of the pantheon of the ancient Hebrew people, and the way he seems to describe it, is, at least from my memory, is that the idea that Elohim, the Most High pantheon, evolved into El Shaddai and then became I can't remember the other words for it, but it just okay. Over time the people whittled down their pantheon to one, and then from there they extrapolated this rest of this theology.
Well, I told you what Rabbi what is his darn name? I'm so bad with names. Tovia Singer. How he does it, he makes it aspects instead of personage. But Elohim is clearly persons. There's no way to make it like personality traits. And that's what he does.
Okay.
That's how they whittled it down to monotheism from polytheism. It's just not there.
So regardless of what all these words mean,
yeah,
certainly there's a fact of the matter that there's a people that survived for thousands of years, and still to this day they thrive, right?
Well,
that requires
they're
some
still
some relationship to reality. A person
sure.
who has no relationship to reality, they're going to be totally lost. You imagine a schizophrenic person walking down the street in the throes of their fit, and just it's not a
Don't
good
get
way
me
to
to
survive,
crying, man.
especially not in ancient times.
Or
Where
any other
there's
time. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
yeah, sure. So I'm not going to discount the Bible as totally devoid of any kind of truth. Obviously, the people that wrote it had some kind of relationship to truth, but as far as using this as a prophecy and a roadmap for the future, why can't we just say that this is their contextual historical reality, their relationship to the truth of goodness and what we are supposed to do in whatever times we are in, but we need to keep looking, keep exploring, keep learning, and develop our own understanding of it for our time.
Well, what's good about holding slaves?
Nothing.
What's good about killing people out of vengeance? What's good about that?
Probably nothing.
And I could just keep going, but I don't want to bore you. Their view of it doesn't make sense in reality.
Sure.
Everyone has better morals than this.
Sure.
So why do I care what they think?
Yeah, so why not just throw the whole thing out?
That's fine. You're welcome to it. I invite you to.
But why don't you?
I can't. I see the truths in it.
Sure. I mean, there are some truths in it. Like, that's what I was talking about. There are some truths in it, but we don't need this book for any of them, right?
There's nothing but truth in it. It's just it's very poorly read, like someone's in 6th grade, and that's the tradition. I'm sorry, I'm not in 6th grade. I can't read it like that.
So then I'm guessing that if I pull up some kind of scripture here that is some kind of enjoyment to the Israelites to slaughter, you're going to have a different interpretation of that than whatever I'm reading on the screen.
No, but if you look up Strong's Exhaustive Concordance H1152, not good at that, 1152, probably the word slay includes the idea of entertaining and clapping. And it's not about chopping off folks' heads, but it is about entertaining them. And in the literal sense, not like you have to do a comedy routine, but like you and I are having a conversation right now, entertaining each other. Entertain, like to sit at the same table. So it got translated to kill. I understand that. And the Christians normally say, well, it was justified killing. It wasn't murdered. Dude, there's a word for that in the Hebrew language. And the times it means to literally end someone's life, it's talking about a good guy getting persecuted to death. And the times that it's talking about going to war to slay and slaughter the enemy, by the way, using only a sword or a stone, which words it defines as the truth of God written down, the truth of God spoken. They're using stones and swords to slay the people. That is, make them believers. It's not about smashing in baby heads. It's really not. And we all know there's nothing good about killing people. Nothing. Except self-defense when you have to, and it's still not good.
Well, we know that. But, I mean, slay is not the only word that they use for killing.
Yeah, there's slay, slaughter, slayer.
Put to death is a common way.
This all came out as kill. I mean, are you looking at muth? Because muth means to end someone's life. Is that the definition you found? Which one are you looking at?
Well, I was just on slay, and now I've moved on to kill.
Well, there's different words that got translated to slay. They're not all the same Hebrew word either.
Right.
There's like 5 different expressions. Look, if it meant end their life, that could be one Hebrew word. It doesn't need to be 5 and 6 different ones.
So you're saying that the equivocation that we see in the translations of today wasn't present back then?
Ask the Jews. The Jews know these words.
You know, I'm not going to dispute that. I don't know. You could be right. It's always bugged me, and this is, you know, one of the biggest contentions I have with, you know, just the idea that the Bible is worth anything at all. It's just that the words they're too easily drawing. It's too easy to draw false equivalences with these words. They all have several meaning according to these dictionaries.
No, they're all about the same meaning. Throughout every definition of it, it's about the same thing.
So like
the
Elohim
problem is that
being God or a ruler.
No,
that's vastly different.
No, ruler, powerful being, governor, that's all the angel, that's all the same thing. That's what those, that's all that's one meaning. A group who govern. That's all one meaning. That's not different.
If I use the word most high to refer to anyone who is not most high, then
you'd be wrong.
Fallacy, right? Of some kind. Sure.
Are you reading the usages Elohim or the definitions?
Yeah, the usages.
No, don't read the usages. That doesn't matter. You're talking about translation problems when you read the usages.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm trying to understand. How you're approaching that is, how you see these translation problems playing out in reality.
Well, for instance, one of the problems is Elohim, a plural of powerful beings, got translated to monotheistic God. How's that for an obvious problem? The word stone got translated to mean a rock that you throw at someone. The truth of the Bible got translated to be a sword that you cut heads off with. That's just bad translation. And I'm not saying they were bad scholars. I'm just saying Christianity existed verbally before the translations that we have were put together. Even the Greek is written about late Judaism, early Christianity. It's written in Greek. It's not even written about their own Greek religion. So you can't read it in the Greek and go, oh, this is what they thought. No, it's a translation of what they thought.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. And I'm just trying to make the point that these thoughts, as we are presented with them today, are, for all intents and purposes, useless.
Well, you're welcome to it being useless. I'll tell you who does need to understand it. When Jesus comes, he needs to understand it. But you don't. In fact, you're fine being, I don't know, toxic and combative. That's fine too, if that's what a person chose to be. I'm not saying you are. But you're welcome to be an agnostic, an atheist, whatever. That's perfect. This is exactly what it's designed to allow, is these great variations in our beliefs.
It's designed to allow that.
But still have the memory of Goldilocks, to still have it in our social conscious that these stories exist.
Okay.
There's no reason you have to adhere to any of this. Unless you're Christ, in which case, dude, you're way behind the power curve.
It's just, so the words in the Bible that say something like Christ is coming back.
Where does it say
How did you gain that confidence? No, you made that statement just now that Christ is coming. Did you not get that from the Bible?
There's Christ in the clouds, and then there's Christ as a thief. One is born onto the earth. The other one comes from the sky. They meet in the middle, to build bridges, and pontificate literally.
And that comes from the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can dig into that, find the exact words for those scriptures, and we will not find any other meaning for them. It will be
well, like I said, I'm speaking in English, which is a translation. But I find no problem with what I'm proposing in immediate or large context, that these definitions, which which is the part that the only part, he doesn't agree with me, but the part that Dr. Josh finds interesting is that this actually can be read this way definitionally. Not that he agrees at all. He doesn't. I'm not saying he endorses me in any way, but it is interesting that can be a consistent reading frame where God is love, literally, and that God asks for no violence at any point, and that's not what it's talking about.
So God,
but there's tribalism and bias.
No violence. So I think that's what I want to do for the next time we talk. I want to find an example from the Bible of God asking for some kind of violence, as we have translated it, apparently, right? And we'll go through the words and kind of see where we can land.
Well, I'll tell you what, a good example of this kind of research is that paper I did, which I've asked you to put in the subscription. I grant you would. Yes, David and Goliath as the planets that are just outside, and all of the ones that are inside of the asteroid belts. That is what the story of David and Goliath is talking about, is near stellar objects, which is why the gods in the sky have wars, is because it's talking about the same set of interactions in physical bodies. And just the fact that, like, for instance, the nomads of the Arabic nations were not famous for using carts to drag everything they own everywhere they went. In fact, humans don't roll, only wheels do. But the word Philistine, the Pilishti, literally means a rolling migratory. And when you take the word Goliath, his name means to be exposed at a distance. And the word Gath means during the winepress or end times. So the full description of Goliath is that he's distant, he becomes obvious during the winepress, and he is a rolling migratory. Now that came out as Goliath of Gath the Philistine, but that's nonsense. That doesn't even have meaning. We had to dig and make meaning for those words. A natural speaking person would have read it as rolling migratory, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff I just said. That's what they would hear if they heard those words, because that's what the words literally mean. So that's why the King James is a translation. It's certainly not the words.
So you're saying that the Philistines were not an army? They were not a nation?
Are you talking about the animism, using local people to describe a situation? Or are you talking about the text and what it's trying to convey? Because that's two very different things.
What is the difference?
Are you talking about the tradition or the text? Because I can't answer till I know that. Were the Philistines really a people? Yes.
What the stories in Samuel about the ascension of David, are they describing a boy encountering a soldier, or are they describing a boy encountering some kind of migratory animal?
Not a migratory animal. It would have to be like a wagon wheel. No, it's talking about the planet Mercury hitting the moons over Jupiter and the planet Jupiter itself. Literal gods in the sky, objects, the traveling stars, the gods. That's what the story of David and Goliath is, which is the same story as Argus and Hercules, and just on and on and on like that. This story is told so many times in so many religions. It's just talking about our solar system falling apart and us seeing it.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, you know what? I think I'm good for now. Yeah, I think I've asked. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? You want to bring it up before we wrap it up? I mean, they're okay. Yeah, everybody's okay for now. Got some kitties on the way, we think. Yeah.
And
How
I
about
would
you?
say one other thing. Peace is an intrinsic internal feeling when a person can sense that they're in harmony with the reality. And like you said earlier, if people are alive, they must know some things about truths. And with that, I would totally agree. So the acceptance
Awesome.
of truth is to have peace.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. Well, I really do thank you, Richard, for coming and having this conversation with me. I hope that it
My
went well.
pleasure.
Um, if you're gonna go back and watch the video I did of your syllogism before, just know that I would
I should.
probably remake it again now, because now I don't know how I would even approach it. I guess I have to like really dissect this conversation right here, and then
I
remake
appreciate
that
you pointing
video.
out that I left out a word. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. I'll correct
Oh,
that
no
immediately.
problem. But yeah, the critique that I did was more in line with a more mainstream idea of the God concept, so it won't be totally
I'm
applicable to
sorry.
you. But yeah, it's good to know, well, to have an idea of where you are coming from now. So I really thank you for coming with me, coming to have this conversation with me today. And I hope we have another one in the future. Thank you to everybody who's been watching in the chat. I really appreciate it. Like it if you loved it. Share it if you want us to spread it. And remember, it's the bridges we build, not the bridges we burn, that give us the edge. Y'all have a great night.